Hello and welcome. Welcome to Bike Build. Grab yourself a cuppa, relax, and let's chat about bikes. At 70 years old, I've had a few motorbikes. This latest project of mine, inspired by my newborn grandson. It's going to be a while before he'll be old enough to ride it, but that's not going to stop me building it. Inspiration, that's what we all need. Inspiration to build a bike, that's what I've got. So, what type of bike is it? Because it's aimed at a child, not literally, because it's aimed at being ridden by a child, it would have small wheels, a small engine, small everything. I've always wanted to build a frame based on aluminium box section in a monocoque style. This project is crying out to have a backbone of aluminium alloy, uneven sided, square section. So that's the concept. That'll be with me in the back of my mind all the time. Ideally, I'll be able to draw this on my whiteboard and add to it as the bike progresses. The bike is going to be basically 24 inches between wheel centres and less than 24 inches high. It'll be actually around 20 to 22 inches high. The forks and wheels I've decided to source from the mini bikes that the youngsters race. It'll have the slick type of tyre, a rounded cross section. It won't be knobbly tyres, it'll be road race style tyres. The wheels come with disc brakes. That'll be great. I do want it to have an old style theme of the 60s race bikes. So there'll be no cantilever, rear end or steep angled seats. It'll have a horizontal style tank and seat unit with the obvious racing hump just to finish it off. It might well have twin shocks on the back, but these modern mini bikes don't have any suspension usually. They just use the tyres as suspension. Well, the motocross bikes do, but the road race ones, I'm not sure whether they have a monoshock rear end. But anyway, I digress. Because this is based on a 60s and 70s racer, it'll have twin shocks, but they'll just be for show. The back end and front end are actually solid. Using just the tyres for suspension, but they are a balloon type tyre, so I can live with that. Where do I see it being run? Well, it's not going to move that fast because it's for a youngster. Maybe the next generation of it. I haven't built this one, I'm already thinking ahead. This bike is going to have the look and sound of a 60s race rep. A two-stroke engine. Why? Well, simplicity, lightweight, they don't leak oil, and they have a nice crackle at the exhaust. The two-stroke engines in modern mini bikes usually have a centrifugal clutch, which means if you were to rev it to hear the sound of the crackle of the exhaust, it would want to pull away. So that's an issue I will have to sort out. I want to be able to rev it at a standstill, but then engage the clutch should the bike be needed to be ridden slowly. I decided that wheel size, wheelbase and steering angle would help evolve the design. So I went ahead and purchased a pair of forks which came with a front wheel. Super. And a rear wheel with a sprocket. Wanted to visualize it superimposed over the drawing on the whiteboard, so I rigged it up, and that's what it does. Decided on a steering angle of approximately 22 degrees. This is the angle I've settled on for what would be a bike that turns quick. There isn't going to be any speed involved where tank slappers might be an issue. So 22 degrees steering angle, The forks arrived with the front wheel already fitted. On first look at it, it seemed great. Starting to draw in the top section for my monocoque chassis, I realised that the bottom yoke and indeed the top yoke were too high for the scale of the model I was trying to create. The simple task of loosening the clamps on the bottom and top yokes and the clip-ons, sliding them all down the forks so that there was a few inches clearance between the bottom yoke and the front wheel, just so that it looked the part when finished. I could have added a lot lower because there's no suspension, but I was going for authenticity of the retro race rep look. Try saying that. So, yokes set, back on the rig, mounted from hooks on the ceiling, supported on a trusty camera tripod, arrived at the 22 degrees again, and lo and behold, the engine arrived by post. Tempting though it is to run it, I'm not going to bother because I want to keep it pristine at the moment. It's a two-stroke, it's going to run, they're so reliable, so I don't need to run it at this stage of the build. I'm quite happy to just visualize it. Positioning of the engine within the frame, within the 24-inch wheelbase, was dependent on a couple of issues. Height above the ground, position forward enough to miss the front wheel, rear enough for the weight distribution, drawing in the diagonal top tube gave me a concept of where the design was going. Immediately behind the engine there'll be a vertical square section tube, again of aluminium, possibly a different size to the down tube, but more of that as the build progresses. So the vertical would meet the down tube and surround the engine. The vertical would also be a mounting point for the swinging arm. The one issue with racing motorcycles is keeping the chain tension consistent throughout any suspension movement. So people have always tried to mount the gearbox sprocket as close to the swinging arm centre line as possible, so that when the suspension is on full load or least load and the swinging arm is at either end of its travel, you don't get chain issues, over tightening or over slackening to the point where a chain might be thrown off. Now back to this race rep. Because the swinging arm isn't going to move and the shocks at the rear are just going to be for show, there'll be no chain tension issues and no chain guard issues. The one compromise I'm going to make, I'm going to surround the sprockets and chain completely with a safety guard, because the last thing I want is little fingers being too interested in chains and sprockets. This is supposed to be a fun project with a few safety compromises. The swinging arm has yet to be built, but it's evolving. The engine position is pretty much establishing itself. Clearance for any carburettor trumpet is also to be taken into account, so that's the fore and aft position of the engine. The exhaust, I want to keep the look of the bike to be a 60s race rep, so I'm going to choose to put the two-stroke expansion box underneath the engine. The exit of the stinger pipe will be level with the edge of the wheel. That's the rear wheel. So the pipe will be underneath the bike, pretty much horizontal. I don't plan to have any exhaust cans on it for emission or sound deadening. I want to capture the look of Stingers as they once were. Now, this isn't going to please the Noise Society and the pollution people, but it's going to be very rarely run in anger, as you might say. It's more of a static or pedal along mode motorcycle rep. So I'm not concerned with noise abatement or pollution. I would like any person in the vicinity to experience the smell of Castrol and the crackle of a two-stroke race engine. So it may well be that as a static model it operates without a chain on, so it can be revved up. The chain can come later when any child that rides it, and hopefully my grandson will want to ride it in the future, but a chain can be attached at that point. That's for the future, and it's certainly no big concern. Bit of noise, bit of smell, that two-stroke crackle gladden my heart and any enthusiast that listens. So, That's the concept, and it's also an insight into how I go about building my projects. There's lots of visualization. I have to live with a project on show almost in front of me every day so that I can evolve the concept. If I had all the solutions to all the problems, I probably wouldn't make these projects. I like the challenge. There are up and down days, but I hope you'll join me along the way as we build this race rep for my grandson Noah. Join me again soon. Bye for now.